Human beings and the universe have the same structure. What does this insight tell us, and how can we better, or how can we at all connect with this divine creative insight and make use of it? This will be the topic of the following discussion. Dear viewers, a heartfelt welcome in a very special place, a Meral in the middle of Germany. In a moment you will hear what it is about. Dear Gor, so nice that we can be here, and tomorrow we have the 21st of December. Therefore, today we have the shortest day of the year. At the same time, you have ensured that directly above us is a wonderful blue summer sky, and it somehow makes it quite obvious that this is a very special place about which we will talk more about. Let us begin with what I said at the very beginning, the divine nature of human beings. What exactly is its structure and what is the process of becoming? How can we understand the stages in becoming human? When can we talk about being human? When about being a person? Let us simply start at the beginning of a human being.
Lass uns einfach bei dem Anfang eines Menschen beginnen.
Zuerst einmal, ich freue mich sehr.
At first, I am very glad to welcome you and your team at our sacred place, the Meral. Thank you. Regarding your question, we usually regard ourselves as a person, speaking human beings of recent times, and thereby I mean on average the last 5,000 to 6,000 years. We will refer to this again later. Is used to regard oneself as the sum of the following parameters like gender, body, psyche, intellect, name, nationality, several parameters. And we think that we are also the sum of all these parameters. And this is what I call a person, speaking the unity of intellect, psyche, and the physical body, and a little bit of a software package which has been superimposed, something that parents, educators, and society, later also oneself, nurture and care for. And this is not what makes a human being. Instead, it is his expression, his form, and his actual role in a certain life. And the question always is, who is playing this role? And this is what I call the self, or the human being, in contrast to the person, which represents this small focus of the self in the here and now.
Und das ist das, was ich das Selbst oder Mensch bezeichne, im Unterschied zur Person, die diese kleine Fokussierung des Selbstes in Hier und Jetzt darstellt.
Wenn wir jetzt an dem Anfang.
If we talk about the beginning of human existence in this incarnation, we will talk about incarnation later because you would express it somehow differently. But when and where does this whole process begin? Does it already start in the womb? And when do we become what you just described? Where is the beginning?
Wo ist der Startpunkt?
Mutterleib ist die
The womb is the endpoint. And we are already dealing with incarnation. The incarnating one develops much earlier, in earlier stages of the entire evolution, or also of the human evolution. I think it's good if we make a small mental effort and go back to the beginning of evolution, when we still do not talk about time and space, instead about principles, which only later create time and space. A short overview would look like the following. In the beginning, there is oneness, which for us as incarnated ones is very difficult to imagine because we live in a world of separation, where things are not the thoughts and feelings are something different than objects. And it would be difficult to imagine that there was an original and there will also be a future oneness, when simply everything is one. When no specialities were developed, not even time and space, not even the higher-ranking principles. This oneness is not even what we call God or the Absolute. All of that comes later.
Das ist noch nicht mal das, was wir Gott absolut oder das Absolute nennen. Kommt auch erst später. Diese Einheit, die hat drei Potenziale.
This oneness now has three potentials in it. A wise man said, everything has two sides. If you understand that there are three, then you capture the essence. Therefore, we can divide this oneness into the well-known being and becoming, or in Asia, the yin and yang. Yin is being and yang is becoming, the male principle. The third invisible is non-existence, the void and death, breathlessness. The Greeks called it nix, which is in German nix, nothing. Therefore, this emptiness out of which being and becoming develop is the dark night, which in the upcoming turning point plays a certain role. We will again talk about this later. The nothing, being and becoming is the first triada. Here there is no difference between God and human. The point is, what we talk about is you and I and every one of us. It is not something external which brings us forth, that is you.
Du bist und ich bin und jeder von uns ist. Das ist nicht etwas Externes, was uns hervorbringt, das bist du. So.
Now, this oneness splits into polarity or duality or into all polarities which exist. And here the human develops, and here is God, or God the Creator, which we call Creator God. This is like the wave with respect to the ocean. It's this relationship. The substance is the same water. And the deeper you dive into the wave, the more you are in the ocean. There is no boundary. Between the self and the Creator God, there is no boundary. Also, there is no difference in substance.
This all is one becomes quite obvious in the beautiful picture of the wave in the ocean. You are part of it and yet something special.
Yeah, exactly. Yet the point of why this analogy is so good, because there is no boundary between the wave and the ocean. Therefore, we have two principles. The ocean is the totality, like the total creator, and the wave is something individual. This is in principle the only thing which distinguishes human beings from God. Human beings pursue the principle of individuality, and God realizes the principle of totality. Human beings create themselves, a universal entity, and God creates everything that is possible.
Meaning you as human being are a hologram of divine totality?
Exactly. It is a good word. Hologram. It is the principle when you separate a picture into two or into many parts. It always shows the whole picture in a small fragment of it and not a part of it. And so it is also regarding human beings. Humans contain everything that God contains. And now back to this evolution. We are talking about polarity. 2. Here is the self, still not an incarnated human being. Here is our entity, which later becomes the incarnated human being.
Does it have anything to do with the higher self, which one hears very often about in the esoteric area or in the segment which preoccupies itself more intensively with esotericism, or is it ultimately something entirely different?
The higher self is in principle what I call spirit. One can say higher, one can say also lower self, one can say more general self. The love for higher results from our tendency to regard anything higher as good, and what is lower is best to stay away from. The self is whole. And here we are at the point out of what substance consists the self and creator God. And this is something which we have not really understood in modern religion or in science. We have worked with matter, the principle of densification, for a long time, for 200 or 300 years. And 100 years ago, we discovered that energy is an autonomous substance. And now, in the area of energy research, we have progressed. But what we have not understood, that information is not a product of energetic or material processes. It is not a product. Instead, it is an autonomous substance, even a primary substance. And here we are again with spirit. Why higher self? Information, energy and matter, these three substances of creation and also of the human being, result translated to humans, three selves, three shapings of the self. The informative shaping, which we call spirit, the energetic shaping of the self, which we call the soul, and the material shaping, which we call the subtle body, sometimes also light body. I do not talk about matter, instead about the principle of densification. It is not the physical body. This is exactly the point. This is what we call in German the Leib, or the subtle body. And here is this relationship, this triada. And then the self creates this person, the incarnation, the densification with the focus in the self, and in this manner, spirit creates the intellect, the soul creates the psyche, and the subtle body creates the physical body.
Ja, die Inkarnation, die Verdichtung, Brennpunkt in sich selbst. Und zwar auf diese Art und Weise, dass der Geist Intellekt erschafft, die Seele die Psyche und der feinstoffliche Leib den physischen Körper. Und immer wenn wir sagen,
And every time we say spirit, soul, and body, we have a mix-up of levels. The body, the physical body, belongs to the level of the person, as well as intellect and psyche. Spirit and soul belong to the level of the self, or the level of cosmic instances. And the third, the invisible, which we like to blind out, is the subtle body. This is the way the person is built, and we are already at the stage number 5, when the person finally develops. And this is the high point, or low point, according to taste, of human evolution.
If we look at it like that, and you have referred to it in your books and publications, the expression incarnation is not quite correct.
Ein bisschen schief.
Yes, we imagine it like that. Spirit and soul, we have somewhat of a muddle in these expressions, like going into the body. It does not do that. The self creates the body, as well as the intellect and the psyche. This trinity is the person. In principle, we could say impersonation and not incarnation, to go into the flesh incarno.
Or connectedness.
Yes, in principle it is the new oneness or trinity. It separates and then gathers again on a new step. And this is the person which is being built and then dismembered again. All life experiences are integrated in the self, and the self then builds a new person. This is the point. The connection is not between persons. You in a previous life are not the Michael who has been. Instead, the self is the binding element. It is like an actor playing different roles. The roles may have nothing to do with each other, but the actor is the one who connects everything. The actor is the self.
das alles verbindet. Ja. Der Schauspieler ist das Selbst.
Und diese
This impersonation you talk about, or the connectedness which develops here, makes it also obvious that there is something eternal which you do not disrupt with the death of the person, and the self also continues to exist beyond that.
Person nicht quasi abbricht, das Selbst darüber hinaus auch bestehen bleibt.
Die Person,
Persons are created and disintegrate again. We do this. These are our roles, these are our vehicles. The self can never die. Time develops simultaneously with the self. Before duality, before the level of polarity, there is no time and space. And where there is no movement in this oneness, space and time are not possible. This develops later. We are primary. Space and time are our products.
unsere Produkte.
Mit dem
The disintegration of the body, it is something that Christian religious doctrine has taught us. The end of the body brings us closer to the Creator, but it is actually the opposite.
In principle, a human being becomes divine, whereby he carries everything in him, yes? As well as the self carries the principle of information, energy, and matter in it, speaking spirit, soul, and subtle body. It is like that also with the person, which has 3 parts. We have the principle matter also in us. This is divine. God is not spirit, God is whole. If God was spirit, he would not be whole. God is no spirit, and is also no he, yeah?
also ist
Therefore, leaving the subtle body is not something which brings us closer to salvation or to divinity, like the Church tells us. Instead, in this manner, we would leave one of our divine principles if the body dies. On the other hand, something exists eternally, which then searches for a new body.
Das ist richtig.
This is correct. It is a willpower process. Everything that we create, everything that is created, will also disintegrate. We have these experiences, integrate the information, and then we go on. The point is that we, the selves, not the persons, want to develop further. A person is namely an expression from the self, but it's also a bit of a trap, a confinement. Persons tend to become encrusted and stop to develop. And then it is good for the self that the person disintegrates. A new game can then begin anew. In the end, this phase between impersonations and incarnations is a vacation. One makes new plans, looks for new goals, and then one builds again anew.
Aus und dann baut sich mal wieder neu.
When you say it is also a trap, if we look at human beings, of which we are of the opinion, if it is correct or not, which now is not interesting at all, that they, let us say, do things on earth, or what they accomplished usually are judged as negative. Why does it exist? Why is there a self which, in its impersonification, the concrete human being, does not aim for something higher, instead, in case of doubt, moves in free fall?
Nicht nach Hören, sondern im Zweifelsfalle im freien Fall sich bewegt.
Weil's möglich ist.
Because it's possible. The selves are not moral, God is not moral. Evolution is foremost to try everything that is possible, and we allow ourselves this luxury. What does an entity do that is eternal and has a gigantic potential? It tries everything. It is not the sense of our evolution to become like angels. In creation, everything is possible, and we are whole, and therefore we play entirely different roles. And during the development, if we develop further, it is not that we become better. No, we do not. Only the consciousness expands. Entirely new potentials are opened, but becoming better is not the goal of human development.
Andere Potenziale aufgemacht, aber besser werden, das ist nicht das Ziel der menschlichen Entwicklung.
Okay, also insofern.
Okay, therefore, this point of view distinguishes itself from what our religions, let me say, give the illusion or recommend to us as the ascension process.
Gut, die Religion
Well, the religions. We now have a few religions on this planet, all of which developed in the last 5,000 years. All of them are patriarchic, and all are also manipulative and manipulated. These are not healthy belief systems which are currently in existence.
Glaubenskonstrukte, die wir da im Moment am Laufen haben.
Wenn wir
If we go further back in time, if we are now clear about the difference between the self, therefore the divine potential on one side, and what later takes place in the manner of connection and impersonification, however one may call it, let us now go way, way back at some time when there has been something like a beginning. Today, at this time, the prevalent theory or point of view in physics or closely related scientific fields is the Big Bang. Does that not contradict with what you just said? Is something like that imaginable?
Widerspricht das nicht dem, was du gerade gesagt hast? Ist das sowas vorstellbar?
Das ist im Prinzip
These are kind of very simple theories which we now have. They are the logical conclusion from an assumption which a few clever people made 300 years ago. They said that all worldviews, or it was Christian in this case, assume that there is an intelligence which creates and directs everything. And they said, could we try to explain everything without intelligence, for example as chance? If we replace the intelligence with the law of probability, can we explain that? And they have written theories that with probability everything is possible. That it is possible that matter develops by itself, that matter is capable to become more and more complex by chance, to bring forth some form of life, and that consciousness is a product of probabilities of dead matter, and so forth. We know all that. Everything rests on the assumption that it is at all possible, that A, complex orders can develop by chance at all, and B, that it works quickly enough. But it does not do that. 300 years ago, they were not capable to calculate it. Now we can do it. In principle, the Big Bang Theory, the whole theory that our science is based on, the law of probability is the basis of our science. It is mathematically defect. It cannot be sustained. It is only such that thereby we have a long tradition and also sluggishness. Thousands and thousands of human beings have written their PhD thesis about it. Human beings can pursue an arbitrary hoax long enough. Human beings can muck around till the cow comes home. It works. It functions. And if all believe it, all will believe it also, until someone breaks out and points out the mistake in the collective assumption, like in the folk tale, The Emperor's New Clothes. And then suddenly it's obvious that everyone has erred. And therefore, this assumption that chance is capable to accomplish something like that can be easily disproved with a very funny example. It is simply very obvious. Do you know Rubik's Cube? It was popular in the 80s and 90s, I think. In order to arrange this cube perfectly, a minimum of 22 moves is required. You can make 100 and so on. With one move per second, it takes 22 seconds minimum, maybe 2 minutes or maybe 10 minutes. By chance, and this has been calculated, it would take 127 billion years for it. This is 10 times the time span which has been calculated for the age of the universe. This is simply nonsense. It does not work.
Das ist Blödsinn einfach. Es funktioniert nicht.
Ja. Der berühmte
The famous and one of the most renowned physicists of our time, Stephen Hawking, defines also, or in principle asserts, that the whole thing would only function if it had been previously calculated to within a picosecond to enable that everything actually can develop or has developed in this context. Fred Hoyle, a cosmologist, has described the probability of the Big Bang, a marvelous picture when I read it in your book, is as probable as a tornado that sweeps across a junkyard and at the end, all of a sudden, a finished airplane appears. Therefore, I believe that thereby it becomes quite obvious that it is simply impossible.
It's like the following. If someone does not know what an airplane is and how complex the whole machinery is, and only looks at it from above, like the fuselage, a few wings, he may think, okay, maybe not with the first storm, but with the 10th or with the billionth storm it may occur. But if you know the inside, how complex everything is, it is peanuts compared to biological matter. Then it becomes clear that this is not a functioning method. It will never occur. Within the hundredths or 1 billionth tornado, it is way too complex. Chance can never accomplish that. And if a Darwin fantasizes at a time when the information about the cell does not even exist, not to speak about DNA and so forth, he sees human beings, and also animals, in principle as sacs with organs. It is a simple system, how he thinks. Then he assumes that chance could develop such simple things. Now we know better. It does not work. It is simply the sluggishness, the tradition, which prevents us from saying, sorry, we have erred enormously. Without intelligence, without the level of information at the beginning, the whole box does not work.
Then it is ultimately like with the religions which you talked about. It is ideologies, it's dogmas, but has nothing to do with actual reality and also cannot have anything to do with it.
We want to imagine science as a research in facts, but with all theories, it is this basic assumption of science that there is no intelligence which creates and directs everything. If this assumption is an error, and it is an error, you can correctly calculate another 100 steps or billions of steps. Your error gets bigger and bigger. And this is what we have now.
Yes, it is also entirely logical. If the initial assumption is erroneous, everything that is built on it finally must also be erroneous. When we look at history, which is exciting, we see again and again massive, great changes. I also found a remarkable observation, which is quite fresh. We had it a few years ago, this tsunami problem in Asia, or this tsunami wave, which suddenly created enormous destruction. I believe 250,000 dead. And if I remember correctly, scientists from Sri Lanka pointed to the fact that when at the beginning there were 20 to 20,000 dead, there was not a single animal cadaver. What happened? Do the animals have an intelligence which we somehow lost?
Aber nicht ein Tierkadaver. Was ist denn da passiert? Wie kann man, haben die Tiere eine Intelligenz, die wir irgendwie verloren haben?
Ja, Tiere haben.
Yes, animals have intelligence which we do not utilize or utilize poorly, and it is collective intelligence. There is also something like a collective entity for all species, not only with animals, but also with plants. We are much more individualized. We are like offline computers. We try to store everything locally in our hard drive. In animals, it works differently. The animal is always online. And it also receives information live, something we would think about. The animal does not think. It knows directly. And this became quite obvious when, in 2004, when all animal species around the Indian Ocean completely withdrew to higher altitudes, already 3 days before the tsunami, before the earthquake, without any pre-tremors. Not anywhere, as we say, like animals sense it. They did not run around the coastline in panic. No. The information was correct for all species. The only species which has completely overlooked everything and continued to drink daiquiri at the beach was the species of human beings.
Nee, die Information war korrekt und bei allen achten. Die einzige Spezies, dass das alles komplett übersehen hat, ja, und weiter Daiquiri am Strand getrunken hat, das war der Mensch. Ja.
Obwohl man sogar diese...
Even though you say we have not lost it somewhere, we just do not use it, even though it should have been in us. Therefore, there were also human beings.
Yes, there were also Aborigines on the Andaman Islands, indigenous people who copied the animals and partially also heard the call. Mother Earth has forewarned all. This is what we also cannot utilize if we assume that a non-biological body may not possess consciousness. This is also an assumption that consciousness is a product of biology. And if this is not correct, then it is otherwise, and a big body can possess consciousness. And it is like that. Each consciousness is capable of communication. We refuse communication with the planet, and not the other way around.
Wir verweigern die Kommunikation mit dem Planeten, nicht umgekehrt.
This is a great insight, because it means if we no longer refuse, and therefore if we listen to Mother Earth, we can also receive the signals, like any big cat, any bird, any rabbit or an elephant. Therefore, the potential clearly is there. Only our arrogance, based on our false assumptions, blocks our path to this potential and being able to utilize this insight, right?
We have cut ourselves off, it worked well, and it also had its purpose and rationale. It is not a mistake in the system, it is a system. We went into complete cut-off from ourselves, from our great resources, from the collective entity mankind, from planetary entities, etc., and we shut ourselves off. It is just such that the time is over for this stage of the development. It has served its turn, we had this experience, it no longer has any meaning, no value. Therefore, this experience now comes to an end. And as far as the Earth is concerned, she is waiting in the wings for the next quantum jump for herself. and the information is also there, and partially it is also the planet giving us this information. We just do not want to hear it because we think what has been there yesterday will also be there tomorrow in a somewhat modified form. And it will not be the case, just the opposite. We are close to a giant quantum jump.
Von einem gewaltigen Quantensprung.
Auf dieses Thema
Regarding the topic of the actual turning point, I will come back to it in a short while. Are such turning points, such upheavals, something which we have already experienced more often in the cultural development, in the development of mankind? I mention, for example, Atlantis. Are there comparisons, also the ignorance with respect to signals, and then the issue is gone at some time because one did not listen in time?
irgendwann durch, weil man nicht rechtzeitig hingehört
Bei
hat.
Atlantis war das zum Teil auch so,
Ja.
so Ignoranz.
During the time of Atlantis, in part, it was also ignorance. But let us first start with the question of why the epochs change at all. We have one stage in evolution where we have trinity after polarity. This is also when spirit, soul, and subtle body develop in the self. 3 sides. These are the building substances of creation: information, energy, and matter. And in this sequence.
Drei.
These 3 can appear in 5 different combinations.
Eine Möglichkeit, zweite Möglichkeit, dritte.
First combination, second combination, third, fourth, and fifth. This is the actual, fully separated reality. We do not know that realities may have different characteristics. We always assume that reality is chiseled in stone, remains always the same, but reality is flexible. And depending on which principles are closely related and which have been externalized, different reality conditions are the result, also resulting in different abilities in human beings. What has been possible in Atlantis was not possible in Lemuria. What is possible in Mu is not possible in the Age of Eden. What is now impossible to do in the 5th age, and this is a lot, has been possible before and will again be possible in the future. This is something that our sciences do not know at all. Different reality conditions. They have calculated entirely false time spans, and the whole history is entirely incorrect. We have a few artifacts somewhere on the planet which do not fit at all into the picture, like the Sphinx, for example. It is washed out from water, clear traces of water erosion in the Sahara, 11 or 12,000 years ago. Therefore, not built by Egyptians. By whom? No idea. There is no information about it in the history books, because the Egyptians supposedly were the first ones. Or there are some giant monoliths which are built into old, very old fortifications. Today there's no crane able to lift them. Which civilization and when? This is something which is completely ignored for the same reason. Scientists are simply human beings who have written a PhD thesis, and nobody will stand up at age 60 and will say, "People, I made a mistake, take back my PhD." One does not do this. Human beings remain human beings, and so history remains history.
Ergeben auch geschichtliche
So,
Epochen.
these different combinations of the 3 principles also result in different historical epochs. These changes, which come and go, are separated by about 5,000 years. Speaking, every 5 to 6,000 years, the reality, the planet, and human beings make a giant jump into a new quality with other play rules.
Zeiten sind voneinander.
Cataclysms, speaking catastrophes, separate these ages from each other. The Earth always reconfigures. Land masses and water masses are distributed differently. By the way, the planet also grows. Yes, it grows. This is also blinded out. And human beings also make a jump into a different quality. These are dramatic events, are catastrophes. In our tradition in the West, we only remember the last great flood. The Mayas and the Aztecs speak of 4 different transfigurations. But in the end, a circle consists of 5 ages, in total 26,000 years. This is the time span we talk about as a historical time span, and most human beings have started their incarnation circles within this time span. Not 100,000 years ago. Even more, most human beings now on this planet are young selves. They do not have the whole time span behind them. Most have only begun to incarnate in the fifth age, speaking 5,000 years ago. These are young selves. They have entirely different assignments compared to human beings who have started much earlier and are now in a different phase and also have different assignments for themselves and for the planet.
anderen Lebensphase stecken und ganz andere Aufgaben für sich und für den Planeten auch haben.
Wenn wir uns ansehen, wie wir, Planet ist ja das, ich sag mal, überragende Stichwort, mit diesem Planeten im Augenblick umgehen.
Ja.
Also im Prinzip ein Leben gegen den Planeten, gegen die Natur.
When we look at the planet and how we treat the planet, in principle, we have a life against the planet, against nature.
Ist das wirklich der Weg?
Is this really the way where we must go? Or, as a next step, is there a different synthesis instead of against nature?
Andere Synthese. Also eine Synthese, nicht eine Antithese.
Ja, es geht
There is no way around it. It is not that we must now think about if we want to undertake this. We have no chance. The civilization will be destroyed. Each civilization dies at some point, and abruptly, and with upheavals, in which the planet participates now. This civilization, even if the upheaval did not occur, is a civilization which is not sustainable. It is, so to speak, built on eternally accelerated growth in a limited space. This is the principle of a bomb. It is not at all set up for continuous existence. Only because humanity, as a collective entity, knows that these ages are limited to 5,000 or 6,000 years, can we afford this luxury. Yes? To live it up, to build such a thing. But sustainability is something else. The civilization has no future. And what will be a challenge for us in the near future is the fact that the whole reality changes. The planet will be different, and there will also be different natural laws. This is something which today's science does not know, that natural laws are also habits of nature. Nothing lasts over millions of years. Instead, they are relatively short phases. We will have a different planet, different reality conditions. And we will have to come to a different synthesis with the planet.
einen Planet haben, andere Realitätsbeschaffenheit und wir werden eine andere Synthese eingehen müssen mit dem Planeten.
Wenn wir jetzt
If we now talk about such an upheaval, a turning point, you spoke about catastrophes, cataclysms. Is it something we need to realize? That we stand close in front of a development which brings such grave changes with it that we interpret them as catastrophes, and thereby naturally and automatically comes the question,
einerseits
do I need to be afraid of it? And the other question, can I prepare for it? How can I deal with such a grave change, which is simply the pressing of a reset button of the planet in order to create an entirely new reality, new natural laws? How can I prepare myself, and do I need to be afraid?
Angst haben
Having fear is not wrong if it is constructive. Fear is simply a force which either drives you to meaningful activities or into senseless panic. So fear may be good. The point is that as a person, one does not at all master this jump. What we have all talked about in the beginning, the self, is the ultimate meta-resource of human beings. This tandem of self and person is what can and will master the wave, this quantum jump. Speaking, we are now urgently reliant on opening the door between the person and my divinity, my meta-resource, because only in that condition will I be able to master all of this.
das alles handeln können.
Ja. Aber ich kann es handeln.
Jeder
Also
kann es handeln, ja.
Das wollte ich sagen. Also,
This is exactly what I wanted to ask. How can we manage this? And there is no reason to go into desperation or panic. Instead, to prepare with respect, therefore not with fear in the sense of panic. But is it not that we will experience a catastrophe and there will be nothing after that?
ja, eine Katastrophe erleben werden, die danach nichts mehr sein, dass danach nichts mehr sein wird.
Es wird sehr viele
Very much will be destroyed. With each quantum jump, a great deal of data is also erased. It is not about erasing material carriers, instead much information is erased in the information field. This enables a genuine new beginning for us, so that we do not start from the old.
In principle, we experience this with missing information about Lemuria and Atlantis. There is, as you have written so beautifully, respect for Plato, no question, but there are very few individual pieces of information which were retained after the great erasing. In principle, we know very little.
We know little, and one can tap into the universal records and get information, but as a civilization, we no longer carry this information with us. And this also has a purpose. We make a new beginning. And now again we create a new beginning. Much information will be erased. This event will be dramatic, very dramatic. Many human beings will also finish their physical existence and become non-physical entities. This is also not a mistake in the system. Maybe now it sounds, cold, but these selves which have incarnated for this event did not plan to survive and master this event. It is also a little bit like wanting to participate. And on the other hand, there are those who not only want to and will survive and master it, but they also have an assignment in this process. Because the planet does not simply do this on its own account, and we also do not make this jump as mankind on our own account. These are processes which are coupled to each other. There is an agreement. The planet waits in the wings and says, "Humans, are you ready now? The time window will close very soon. I have to carry out the jump. Are you ready?" And this is exactly what it's about, that a critical mass of human beings, speaking person selves, human beings who now again utilize their divinity. Yes, a critical mass in quality, not only quantity. It's not about millions, it's about maybe thousands. But the consciousness must be deep enough in order to co-direct this process and to co-create it. In the moment when the planet presses the reset button, and it will do that, we need to maintain certain structures. This is the task for human beings. We simply do not only survive. No, the task is very serious.
Therefore, this is also such a beautiful distinction you always make regarding this history. It is not about survival, but about life. This is of an entirely different quality, as if I must now somehow manage to get by. Instead, it is also about the task which we have on the one hand. On the other hand, we need a vision, a new idea. Do we need or must contribute something of what the new planet, the new development will look like?
Yeah, this is the difference to our current condition of reality. We are the users here. There is something solid, firm and collective which is binding for all. And we have the obvious impression that we do not create it collectively, but we do. It is closer to us than our own breath. We do it billionfold in each second. It is a matter of course for us. We are creators. Yet, this reality, which we currently create, is very solid, very static, and we simply make use of it, we have the impression. Where we are going now, it's going to be completely different. It's something that needs and wants to be creatively formed, invented and realized. It is not all there. It is not at all there. There is no new earth which someone, an outer instance, will give us, and some Archangel Michael will come and say, "You have been good, you have read spiritual books, here is the new earth for you, you are good." This will not occur. The new earth is simply not there. The point is that there are forces on this planet which have created evil scenarios and have worked out it in great detail. They have invested billions in it and decades, and the scenario will happen if we don't stop them. This is well done homework. On the other side, we sit here and talk about the things we do not want. We do not want this or that and so on. But what we want is only a wishy-washy cloud of a somewhat improved earth. This will not occur. We do not consider the reality conditions of tomorrow. And we do not consider the new fact that this new earth, to a large extent, must still be created. By us, human beings as creators. We wait for something which does not come by itself.
hohen Ausmaß erschaffen werden muss von uns, von Menschen als Schöpfer. Wir warten auf etwas, was von alleine nicht kommt.
Ja. Wenn wir das so
If we do, as you say, if we have this vision for the new, not the repair of the old in a system,
des Alten
which has been thought out and developed to the smallest detail, which in its end is negative and can also drive this planet against the wall, or would drive it against the wall if we simply continue as before. Is this new vision, if it develops from a sufficiently great collective, more powerful than all the billions, more powerful than all that has been developed so far from forces which carry out the exploitation of the planet for decades, probably for 2 or 3 centuries or even more? Is it stronger than that?
betreiben seit Jahrzehnten, wahrscheinlich sogar 2, 3 Jahrhunderten oder vielleicht sogar mehr. Ist das stärker als das?
Es ist,
Let's say qualitatively it is better, and the scenarios which are currently ongoing, and there are several which compete with each other, all of them will not occur. In the ideal case, they will not at all occur, but this is also part of our work. But these scenarios, even though they have been worked out in great detail, do not consider, and they are not even able to consider, that the condition of reality will be different, because the consciousness of their creators has not allowed having this insight. I can say it's wasted money.
Sounds good.
Therefore, to bring it to the point, they have already lost. It still has not been fulfilled. And they will in fact realize that and will be surprised why it did not function, yes? Because of that. Our weakness is the fact that we have not worked out a scenario, no vision, and it needs to be worked out in a collective form or in the form of a network because it needs to have the signature of collectively created. No single human being can create a collective vision which is valid. It must be collectively created for the collective, then it will be valid. And we must get there to work out a common language, common principles. Understanding which parameters of the new reality are fixed or are more or less fixed, and where is the wiggle room, and therefore create a functioning vision. We are now on the way, but we need much more cooperation regarding this, and we need a common vision. If we have 1,000 visions, all different, they cancel each other. The minus point is that we still do not have one. The plus point is our vision works. And the vision of spoiled children, no matter which offices they occupy, simply does not work. This has been lost time and wasted money. They have already lost.
Verzogene Kinder, ja, egal welche Ämter sie da
Haben.
innehaben,
Funktioniert nicht.
die funktioniert einfach
Ja,
nicht. Das
ja.
war einfach verlorene Zeit und rausgeschmissenes Geld. Sie haben schon verloren.
Letzte Frage.
Last question, time. Do we still have time, or is it high noon that we get going?
Wie man so schön sagt, höchste Eisenbahn,
Ja.
dass wir in die Gänge kommen.
Es wird langsam eng.
Gradually it's getting tighter. In other words, it's quickly getting tight. In the end, regarding these jumps, it's not only a planetary process. Our whole solar system is also an organism. Also, it's connected to the sun, the process. Other planets also play a role. And this is also related to the flight of our beautiful solar system across the galaxy. There are also a few other considerations which define the time window. It's not arbitrary when it occurs. We are just in this zone and we are in the end of the time window. It's not such that the Earth may say, 2020, 2030. No, this is not a question at all. We are at the end of the window. In 2016, it will already be precarious, already dramatic. Nobody will miss it, all will notice it. This is still not the wave, the cosmic event, but even before the wave, many systems on this planet will break down. It is naturally good, simply just clever to be prepared for it. But if you only insist on storing survival necessities and do not consider further that you as great entity will not only survive but also master it, yes, then this detailed preparation is of no great value.
Ganz herzliches Dankeschön.
A very heartfelt thank you. This is a perspective which makes it obvious that we live in an extremely exciting but also extremely important time. have extremely important tasks and the chance, the potential to participate so that a better Earth may develop. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Herzliches Dankeschön für das Gespräch.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, we blend in the internet address www.rassadin.de, where you have the possibility to establish contact and foremost the chance to participate. After what I've heard, I believe it is the most important aspect that we may have the chance, the possibility, maybe I can also say also the obligation, not to lean back and let others do the work, do the job, instead to actively pursue the things in order to utilize the potential to participate and jointly develop the vision for a different world, for a different Earth, and all of this will already be the case very, very soon. I also want to point to two publications, Triade, the new paradigm, and God, Human, Creator, World and Life Formula. In this sense, like always, thank you very much for your interest and your attention. Goodbye and until next time.
Tschüss und auf Wiedersehen, bis zum nächsten Mal.